Hello to you today. Kai back with you to share this card that I've done for ScrapnStamp's blog. I'm using the penny black cling stamp called Sunbursts. And as we had snow yesterday, I am really in the mood for some sunbursts. So I decided to use those kinds of colors for this cards. And I'm using color bursts to achieve that, and I thought I would use lemon yellow, tangerine orange for a bit of nice blend together, and I also use an orange to get a little darker in there as well. But first I'm inking it up with Versamark, getting prepared to heat emboss with white embossing powder. I found, as you can't see it, but I can see from my lamp that's just above where I'm working here, that I miss spots, or it doesn't attach to the stamp, so it's not showing, like you can't see it there, but there are some missed spots. So I keep going back in with the Versamark because I think one of the things that you need on this kind of stamping is a good clean stamp in order to get good clean embossing impressions. And once I go over it with the color burst, of course everything changes. I will have to buff it up, and sometimes I do add some white ink to it. If I've damaged it in any way, I'll cover up my mistakes that way. But today I just used a gel pen actually on a couple spots, and it was looking good. So I go ahead here and heat emboss it with the white embossing powder. And it takes a bit, of course. My gun takes a bit to heat up. One of these days maybe I'll get a better gun, but for now I just do that part. Now I'm ready for the fun part. So I've taped down my piece. I should say I'm using watercolor paper, Fabriano hot press, 140 pound, and I've taped it down to avoid some of the buckling that you get. But still, at the end, I put it underneath a very heavy book to totally flatten it. And it works well. I just go on and make another card, come back to it, and it's perfectly straight to be attached and finished. So I'm at this yellow is giving me a run for my money while I'm doing this. So I banged it and I shook it and I had a heck of a time with it, but in any event, I prevailed in the end. So, and first off, I did spritz my sheet just to get it damp, not wet. And then I put on the color and spritzed again using my Ranger spritzer. I like the small spritzer. It doesn't put out as much water, so that it's easier to control it. I was using my other spritzers before, and it just puts out too much water, and then you get puddles. And even this way, I still end up with a puddle, so I will take a dry brush to it. If it's very bad, I will take a dry brush to clean it up, or mop it up, as they say. So I'm just adding in the colors, the lemon yellow and the tangerine mostly at this point. There I've added a little bit of the orange at the bottom right and the mid left. I do add a little bit more, but not very much. And I spray, as I said, sparingly, but here's where I'm mopping up too much water. So I just put a dry brush on it. You don't want to do this, you don't want to move ink per se when you're doing this. You just want to pick up the water from it. You'll end up with a bloom if you try and paint with, like move the ink with it without doing the process of watercolor painting. So I just go on with the spritzing and adding color and spritzing. It's a very quick card to make if you have some color burst on hand. So once I'm done with all the spritzing, I know I make a puddle on the left. There it goes. It's starting to move on the left-hand side. I made a puddle there, so I ended up doing some cleanup with that puddle. Mopping up the excess water. Using my heat gun to dry it and to move some of the ink. I like those little feathers that come out when you move the inks or the color. It's very magical, I think. So you can see here, I'm getting color on the actual heat embossing, so it's that kind of stuff that I'll clean up towards the end of making the card. So now I'm just going to, I'm done the panel, and I'm going to heat emboss my sentiment. My sentiment is from another stamp set from Picket Fence called Forgot to Say Thank You, I believe. And it's just a nice stamp to put on this kind of card, I think, anyway, just to say hello. And I heat emboss it on the black cardstock with white embossing powder. Of course, I use my powder tool before I do the embossing. So I put the card together. I've die cut with my favorite things, wonky rectangle. For some reason, that rectangle will stick to heavy 110-pound cardstock. So I use that pan pastel tool to pry it open, as it's plastic and it won't damage the black cardstock. So I've got the pieces together. I wanted a pop of the black, but I didn't want it going around all four corners, so I did it on the angle. And did my, of course, sentiment on the black. Adhered it to the card with some foam. Oh, that's a nice piece of my hair there. But I added it with foam squares to finish the card. It was a fun card to make. I really like it, I think. I've got a black panel inside with a yellow ready to stamp. So thanks for joining me, and I will see you next time.